Jake Morrison stood on his front porch and watched the sky turn angry. Dark clouds rolled across the Montana plains like waves on a black ocean. The air felt heavy and wrong. His skin tingled with electricity that made his hair stand up. This was no normal storm coming their way. The radio in his kitchen had been screaming warnings all morning. Solar storm, they called it. Electromagnetic pulse. All the fancy words meant the same thing. Trouble was coming, and it would knock out every piece of electronics for hundreds of miles. Jake had been getting ready for 3 days. His grandfather taught him well about being prepared. The old man fought in 2 wars and lived through the worst drought Montana ever saw. He built this farm to last, and he built it to survive anything. The barn was the key. From the outside, it looked like any other farm building. Red paint, white trim, big enough for equipment and hay. But inside the walls was a web of metal mesh that would stop any electromagnetic pulse cold. His grandfather called it a Faraday cage. Jake just called it smart planning. He loaded the last of his supplies into the barn, food for 2 weeks, water for a month, generator with extra fuel, radio equipment that would work when everything else died, his grandfather's rifle and enough ammunition to fight off raiders or hungry wolves. The first wave of the storm hit just as Jake finished checking his cattle. The air shimmered like heat waves but cold. His watch stopped working. The truck engine died without warning. Even his mechanical wind-up clock slowed down and stopped. Then he heard the engines. High above the clouds came a sound like thunder, but wrong. It whined and sputtered. Something big was fighting to stay in the air and losing. Jake grabbed his rifle and stepped outside. A ship broke through the storm clouds. It was nothing like the military vessels he sometimes saw flying overhead. This one was sleek and silver, shaped like a bullet with wings. Smoke poured from its side, and sparks flew from damaged parts. The ship wobbled in the air like a drunk bird. Its engines coughed and died. For a moment it hung in the sky, silent except for the wind. Then it began to fall. Jake ran toward his north pasture as the ship crashed into his field. It hit hard enough to shake the ground under his feet. Dirt and grass flew everywhere. His cattle scattered, running away with wild eyes and loud calls. For a long moment, nothing moved. Steam rose from the crashed ship. Then a hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air. 13 figures climbed out of the wreck. They moved like soldiers, checking their weapons and forming a line. As they took off their helmets, Jake saw they were all women. But they were not human women. Their faces were sharp and wild. Their ears came to points. Their eyes reflected the storm light like mirrors. Patterns of short fur covered their cheeks and hands. They looked like women who had been mixed with wolves. The leader was tall and strong. Her dark hair had streaks of silver. Her blue eyes were hard as winter ice. Scars marked her armor from old fights. A big rifle hung on her back. She walked to Jake's fence and stopped. Her voice carried an accent he had never heard before. It sounded like growling mixed with words. "Human," she said. "I am Captain Luna Frost of the Fenrir Pack. We need shelter until this storm ends. We can pay you, or we can take what we need. I would rather pay." Jake kept his rifle ready but pointed down. These were not raiders or bandits. They stood like professional soldiers. Dangerous, but not wild. "Name is Jake Morrison," he said. "This is my land. Storm like this will last 3 days at least. What is your story, Captain?" The wolf women gathered behind their leader. Their hands rested on weapons, but they did not point them at Jake. They watched him with careful eyes. "We are bounty hunters," Luna said. "We were bringing a prisoner to justice when the storm hit us. Our ship is broken. Our prisoner escaped in the crash. He is somewhere in your fields now, and he is very dangerous." Jake looked at the women again. Their armor showed fresh damage from fighting. Some of them had bandages on their arms and faces. They looked tired and hurt. Whatever they had been through was bad. "What kind of dangerous?" Jake asked. Before Luna could answer, a sound came from his fields that made his blood turn cold. It was a howl, but not from any animal Jake knew. It was hungry and angry and wrong. His cattle heard it too. They ran away faster, crying out in fear. "That kind," Luna said. Her voice was grim. "We do not have time to talk more, human. That creature will kill everything on this farm if we do not stop it. We cannot track it in this storm without shelter and time to rest." Jake looked toward his scattered cattle. Then he looked at the storm getting worse on the horizon. His practical mind fought with his caution. But that howl made his choice for him. Something was already threatening his animals and his land. "Barn is protected from the storm," he said, pointing to the big building. "You can use it, but I want answers, and if your people cause trouble, we will have problems." Luna nodded once. "Fair enough. Zara, Claire, check the barn. Mia, look at our equipment. Everyone else, watch the area. We hunt when the sun comes up." The pack moved like a machine. Each woman knew her job and did it without being told twice. Jake watched them work and wondered what he had gotten himself into. The solar storm was the smallest of his problems now. Jake woke up before sunrise to quiet voices coming from the barn. The storm was still raging outside. Strange lights danced across the sky like colored fire. His radio made nothing but static noise. He had slept in his house with his rifle next to the bed, but the wolf pack had kept their word. No trouble. He made coffee and gathered some of his dried meat. When he walked into the barn, he stopped and stared. The women had turned his storage space into a war room. Maps covered his hay bales. Weapons lay on tables, clean and ready. Several of the women were treating wounds with medical tools that looked like they came from the future. Luna looked up from a glowing display that somehow still worked despite the storm. "Your protection is good, human. Military quality." "My grandfather was careful," Jake said, setting down the food and coffee. "He built this place to survive anything. Coffee is fresh. The meat is from deer I shot last fall. You earned it." The offer surprised several of the pack members. A young woman with red fur markings sniffed the jerky carefully before taking a piece. Jake remembered Luna calling her Zara. "It tastes good," Zara said. The others relaxed when she approved. Luna took a cup of coffee and studied Jake with new interest. "You are different from other human farmers we have met." "How so?" "Most humans either fear us or try to boss us around. You just work with us, like we are equals." Jake thought about this. "My grandfather always said that out here it does not matter what you look like or where you come from. All that matters is if you can do your job and watch out for your neighbors. You ladies seem to be doing both." "Ladies," Zara repeated with a smile. "I like that better than wolves or aliens." Their talk was broken by a sound that made Jake's blood freeze. The distant noise of breaking wood came from the direction of his house. "He is at the farmhouse," said Claire, a dark-haired woman looking at her scanner. "He is tearing it apart." Jake's vision went red with anger. 3 generations of memories were in that house. Photos, tools, furniture that belonged to his grandfather and his father. The creature was not just threatening his property, it was destroying his family's history. "Jake, no!" Luna commanded, but Jake was already moving. He ran toward his house, abandoning the plan. Behind him, he heard the pack following. Luna's voice was sharp on their radio. "All units, change of plan. Follow the human. Protect the farmhouse." But Jake was beyond listening to tactics and strategy. Some things were worth more than safe plans. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds were bad. The monster had made this personal. Jake reached the top of the hill and looked down at his house. What he saw made him stop and stare in shock. The 2-story home that had sheltered his family for generations was being torn apart piece by piece. Windows were smashed. The front porch was ripped away. Through the holes in the walls, Jake could see furniture being destroyed. This was not random destruction. The creature was sending a message. "Jake, get back!" Luna's voice carried across the distance as the pack spread out behind him. But Jake was already moving down the slope with his grandfather's rifle in his hands and cold fury in his heart. The creature came out of the ruined farmhouse as Jake got closer. It had been human once, but the changes had twisted it into something from nightmares. It stood almost 7 feet tall. Its muscles were too big and wrong-looking. Wires and metal parts showed under its skin, sparking from the storm. Its eyes glowed with unnatural light. When it smiled, Jake saw rows of sharp teeth that no human should have. "The farmer comes to defend his territory," the creature said. Its voice was like grinding metal mixed with growling. "How primitive!" "You picked the wrong place to make trouble, monster," Jake said, keeping his rifle aimed at the creature's chest. The creature laughed. The sound made Jake's skin crawl. "Did I? I have learned much about you, Jake Morrison, third-generation farmer. Parents died in an accident when you were 16. No brothers or sisters, no wife or children. This collection of buildings and memories is all you have left of your family line." The words hit Jake like punches, but he kept his rifle steady. "And you are a science experiment gone wrong who has spent so long running from these ladies that you are taking it out on my furniture? Looks like we are both having a bad day." Behind the creature, through the destroyed walls of the house, Jake could see movement. The pack was getting into position. They needed the creature distracted and out in the open. "Your hunters think they can trap me," the creature continued, "but they do not understand what I have become. I do not just heal from damage, I adapt. Each injury makes me stronger. Each chase teaches me more about my enemies." "That is real interesting," Jake said, taking a step forward. "But here is something you might not have learned about humans. We are really good at holding grudges." The creature's improved senses suddenly picked up something that made it spin toward the barn. Luna and another woman were moving in from the east. 2 more came from the west. The creature's awareness was impressive, but Jake had been counting on it. "Now you are probably wondering how we knew you would come here," Jake said, taking another step forward. The creature's attention snapped back to him. "See, Luna was right about you being smart, too smart for your own good." The creature's eyes got narrow. "Explain." "You study your enemies, learn their patterns and weaknesses. So you studied me, found out about my family and my history, figured out what would hurt me most. But that works both ways." Jake could see understanding starting to show in the creature's face. "While you were tearing apart my house, you were not watching for attacks. And while you were trying to get inside my head, you forgot that I was getting inside yours." The trap was not the house. It was the creature's own thinking. Jake had bet that something smart enough to use mind games would be proud enough to fall for them. "You are predictable," Jake said. "Luna's pack has been chasing you across space, so you learned to think like them. But you never learned to think like a farmer." "And what does a farmer think like?" the creature snarled, finally understanding that it had been outplayed. "Simple. When something threatens your livelihood, you do not hunt it or trap it." Jake smiled without humor. "You eliminate it." The attack came from all sides at once. Luna's pack had positioned themselves using Jake's knowledge of his own land. Energy weapons fired in perfect order, each shot planned to drive the creature toward the center of the killing field. But the creature was even more dangerous when cornered. Its improved speed let it dodge most of the first shots. Its electronic parts began working around the storm as its emergency systems turned on. The creature jumped toward Jake with inhuman speed, claws out. Jake dove to the side, firing his rifle as he moved. The bullet hit the creature in the shoulder, spinning it around but barely slowing it down. Luna's voice cut through the noise. "Jake, stay down!" The pack's heavy weapons opened up. Energy pulses lit up the dark sky. The creature moved like liquid lightning between the shots, using the terrain and the destroyed house for cover. Its military training showed as it turned Jake's own farmyard into a maze of defensive positions. "He is adapting faster than we thought," reported another pack member over the radio. "His electronics are beating the interference." Jake rolled behind his overturned truck as the creature's return fire burned the ground where he had been lying. The creature had somehow gotten energy weapons during its rampage across the galaxy, and it knew how to use them. "We need to end this now," Luna commanded, "before it fully adapts to our tactics." Jake looked at the ruins of his home. He saw the scattered pieces of 3 generations of memories. Something settled into place in his mind. This creature had taken everything that connected him to his past. It was time to make sure it did not threaten anyone's future. The storm had gotten worse by midday, but the electromagnetic chaos actually helped them. The creature's enhanced abilities were partly electronic, and the interference made the fight more even. Jake had armed himself with his grandfather's hunting rifle and a pistol, but Luna insisted he also carry one of their energy weapons. The small pulse rifle felt strange in his hands, but after Luna showed him how it could blow apart an old tree stump, he quickly got used to its weight. The pack moved through Jake's farmland with impressive coordination. They talked through hand signals and low sounds that Jake could not hear, but somehow felt in his bones. Their wolf heritage was more than looks. They had enhanced senses that made them excellent trackers even in the storm's interference. "Movement. 2 miles south," whispered a scarred woman named Beth, who was scouting ahead. "He left the cattle and is moving toward the farm buildings." Jake's blood ran cold. His house contained everything he owned, every family treasure and memory from 3 generations of Morrisons. "We need to cut him off." "No," Luna commanded. "We stick to the plan. Drive him toward the canyon." But Jake was already studying the terrain ahead. The creature's path would take him right past the old grain silo, a structure that had been in his family for decades. If the creature decided to make a stand there, it would have perfect cover and multiple escape routes. "Your plan will not work," Jake said firmly. "He is not acting like normal prey." "Look at his movement pattern. He is scouting, learning the layout. He is planning something." Claire checked her scanner again. "Jake is right. The target's movement is too systematic. He is not running away. He is hunting us." Luna's expression darkened. "Explain." "This Kane is not just a monster," Jake realized. "He still has human intelligence, and you said he was a soldier. He is treating this like a military fight, not a chase. He is looking for tactical advantages." The pack exchanged worried looks. They had been hunting Kane for months across multiple worlds, but always in cities or wilderness areas. A farm was something different. It mixed open ground with structures, natural terrain with human-made obstacles. "So, what do you suggest?" Luna asked. Jake studied the landscape he knew better than his own reflection. "We do not drive him anywhere. We make him come to us. There is one place on this farm that offers perfect cover, water access, and multiple defensive positions. He will figure that out eventually and try to claim it." "Where?" "The old homestead ruins, about a mile north of here. It is where the first Morrison built his cabin in 1887. Stone foundation, natural springs, clear view of the entire valley. If I were a smart predator, that is where I would make my stand." A tech specialist named Mia was already pulling up maps on her device. "He is right. Perfect defensive position. But if we know he will go there, we get there first," Luna finished. "Set our own trap." The plan came together quickly. Half the pack would take positions around the ruins while the other half would begin a careful drive operation, pushing Kane toward what he would think was a perfect refuge. Jake would coordinate the operation from high ground, using his knowledge of the terrain to adjust their tactics in real time. As they moved out, Zara fell into step beside Jake. "You are different from the other humans we have met," she observed. "How so?" "Most humans either fear us or try to control us. You just work with us, like we are equals." Jake considered this. "My grandfather always said that out here it does not matter what you look like or where you come from. All that matters is whether you can pull your weight and watch your neighbor's back. You ladies seem to be doing both." "Ladies," Zara repeated with amusement. "I like that better than wolves or aliens." Their conversation was interrupted by a sound that made Jake's blood freeze. The distant but unmistakable noise of splintering wood came from the direction of his house. "He is at the farmhouse," Claire's voice crackled over the radio. "He is tearing it apart." Jake's vision went red. 3 generations of memories, photos, heirlooms, everything that connected him to his family's history. The creature was not just threatening his property, it was destroying his heritage. "Jake, no!" Luna commanded, but Jake was already moving. He abandoned the plan and headed directly toward his home at a dead run. Behind him, he could hear the pack falling into pursuit formation. Luna's voice was sharp over the radio. "All units, abort the drive. Move to the farmhouse. The human has compromised the operation." But Jake was beyond hearing tactical considerations. Some things were worth more than safe plans and careful strategies. Some things were worth fighting for, even if the odds were impossible. The monster had made this personal. Jake reached the hill overlooking his farmhouse and stopped dead. The 2-story home that had sheltered 3 generations of his family was being systematically torn apart. Windows were smashed. The front porch had been ripped away. Through the gaping holes in the walls, Jake could see furniture being destroyed with methodical precision. This was not random destruction. Kane was sending a message. "Jake, get back!" Luna's voice carried across the distance as the pack spread out behind him. But Jake was already moving down the slope, his grandfather's rifle in his hands and a cold fury in his heart. Kane emerged from the ruined farmhouse as Jake approached. The creature had once been human, but the genetic modifications had twisted him into something nightmarish. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his muscles grotesquely enlarged, with visible electronic implants that sparked and flickered from the storm's interference. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and when he smiled, Jake could see rows of surgically enhanced teeth. "The farmer comes to defend his territory," Kane said, his voice a distorted growl that carried unnatural harmonics. "How primitive." "You picked the wrong place to make a stand, monster," Jake replied, keeping his rifle trained on the creature's center mass. Kane laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Did I? I have learned much about you, Jake Morrison, 3rd-generation farmer. Parents died in an atmospheric processor accident when you were 16. No siblings, no wife, no children. This pathetic collection of buildings and memories is all you have left of your bloodline." The words hit Jake like physical blows, but he kept his rifle steady. "And you are a science experiment gone wrong who has spent so long running from these ladies that you are taking it out on my furniture. Seems like we are both having a bad day." Behind Kane, through the destroyed walls of the house, Jake could see movement. The pack was moving into position, but they needed Kane distracted and in the open. "Your hunters think they can trap me," Kane continued. "But they do not understand what I have become. I do not just heal from damage. I adapt. Each injury makes me stronger. Each chase teaches me more about my enemies." "That is real interesting," Jake said, taking a step forward. "But here is something you might not have learned about humans. We are really good at holding grudges." Kane's enhanced senses suddenly picked up something that made him spin toward the barn. Luna and Beth were flanking from the east, while Claire and Mia approached from the west. The creature's tactical awareness was impressive, but Jake had been counting on it. "Now you are probably wondering how we knew you would come here," Jake continued conversationally, taking another step forward. Kane's attention snapped back to him. "See, Luna was right about you being smart. Too smart for your own good." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "You study your enemies, learn their patterns, their weaknesses. So you studied me, found out about my family, my history, figured out what would hurt me most. But that street runs both ways. Jake could see realization beginning to dawn in the creature's enhanced features. While you were tearing apart my house, you were not watching the approaches. And while you were trying to get inside my head, you forgot that I was getting inside yours. The trap was not the house. It was Kane's own psychology. Jake had gambled that a creature intelligent enough to use psychological warfare would be arrogant enough to fall victim to it himself. You are predictable, Kane. Luna's pack has been chasing you across 3 star systems, so you have learned to think like them. But you never learned to think like a farmer. And what does a farmer think like? Kane snarled, finally understanding that he had been outmaneuvered. Simple. When something is threatening your livelihood, you do not hunt it or trap it. Jake smiled grimly. You eliminate it. The coordinated attack came from all sides at once. Luna's pack had positioned themselves using Jake's knowledge of the farmland's sightlines and approaches. Energy weapons fired in perfect sequence, each shot calculated to drive Kane toward the center of the killing field. But Kane was even more dangerous when cornered. His enhanced speed allowed him to dodge most of the initial shots, and his electronic implants began overriding the storm's interference as his body's emergency systems activated. The creature leaped toward Jake with inhuman speed, claws extended. Jake dove sideways, firing his rifle as he moved. The bullet took Kane in the shoulder, spinning him around but barely slowing him down. Luna's voice cut through the chaos. Jake, stay down. The pack's heavy weapons opened up, energy pulses lighting up the storm-darkened sky. Kane moved like liquid lightning between the shots, using the terrain and the destroyed house for cover. His tactical training was evident as he turned Jake's own farmyard into a maze of defensive positions. He is adapting faster than predicted, Beth reported over the radio. His implants are overcoming the interference. Jake rolled behind his overturned truck as Kane's return fire scorched the ground where he had been lying. The creature had somehow acquired energy weapons during his rampage across the galaxy, and he knew how to use them. We need to end this now, Luna commanded, before he fully adapts to our tactics. Jake looked at the ruins of his home, at the scattered remnants of 3 generations of memories. Something settled into place in his mind. This creature had taken everything that connected him to his past. It was time to make sure it did not threaten anyone's future. Luna, Jake called out, I need you to trust me one more time. Jake, no. 1 shot. That is all I need. Can you give me 1 clear shot? There was a moment of silence over the radio. Then Luna's voice came back, steady and professional. Copy that, farmer. 1 shot coming up. The pack moved like they shared one mind. Each member knew exactly where the others would be. They flowed around Kane's defensive positions like water around stones, forcing him to constantly shift and adapt. But Jake could see what they could not. Kane was learning too quickly. Each exchange taught him more about their tactics, their timing, their individual fighting styles. His enhanced mind was processing and adapting faster than they could adjust their strategies. That was when Jake remembered his grandfather's most important lesson. Sometimes the best strategy is the one your enemy cannot predict because it does not make tactical sense. Luna, when I give the signal, I need everyone to stop firing and fall back, Jake said into his radio. That is suicide, Jake. The moment we stop suppressing him, he will come for me. I am counting on it. Jake could hear the pack's weapons fire intensifying as Kane pressed his attack. The creature was magnificent in combat. He was a perfect fusion of human intelligence, enhanced genetics, and electronic augmentation. In any reasonable fight, he would be unstoppable. Good thing Jake had never been particularly reasonable. Now, Jake commanded. The sudden silence was deafening. Kane, who had been weaving between energy pulses and return fire, suddenly found himself alone in the center of the farmyard, with only Jake Morrison standing between him and escape. "Brave little farmer," Kane growled, advancing slowly. His enhanced senses were scanning for the trap, the ambush, the tactical surprise. "But bravery without intelligence is just suicide." "Maybe," Jake agreed, standing perfectly still. "But here is the thing about us humans that all your intelligence reports probably missed. We are not particularly interested in being reasonable when someone threatens our home." Kane was close now. Close enough that Jake could see the individual electronic implants beneath the creature's skin. He could smell the ozone scent of overcharged electronics. The monster's claws extended, preparing for the killing stroke. "Any last words, farmer?" Jake smiled. "Yeah. You never asked why my grandfather built protection around his barn but left his house unshielded." Kane's enhanced mind processed this information in the microsecond before Jake triggered the device hidden in his pocket. The farmhouse had not been unprotected. It had been transformed into an electromagnetic pulse generator powered by the storm itself and focused through a network of conductive materials Jake's grandfather had woven into the very structure of the building. The pulse hit Kane at point-blank range. His electronic implants overloaded in cascading failure. The creature's enhanced speed and strength, dependent on the fusion of organic and synthetic systems, faltered as neural interfaces fried and biomechanical augmentations failed. Kane staggered. His perfect coordination suddenly became clumsy as half his nervous system went offline. For the first time since the hunt began, he looked vulnerable. Luna's pack did not waste the opportunity. Energy restraints activated around the creature, holding him fast as his systems struggled to reboot. Within seconds, Kane was secured and unconscious, his body overwhelmed by the cascade failure of his augmentations. "How did you know that would work?" Luna asked, approaching cautiously. Jake looked at the ruins of his house, now completely devastated by the electromagnetic pulse. "I did not. But my grandfather always said that if you are going to make a stand, make sure it counts." The storm was already beginning to weaken. The first hints of normal sky showed through the electromagnetic chaos. In a few hours, communications would be restored, and the pack could call for pickup. "Your house," Zara said sadly, looking at the destruction. "Houses can be rebuilt," Jake replied. "Land endures. Family endures. The important stuff survives." Luna studied Jake with newfound respect. "The bounty on Kane is substantial. You have earned a share." "Keep it. But I want to know something. Why are there creatures like him out there? What is really happening in the galaxy that makes monsters like this possible?" Luna exchanged glances with her pack. "There is a war coming, Jake. Not between nations or worlds, but between different ideas of what humanity should become. Some people think enhancement and augmentation are the future. Others think it leads to things like Kane. And what do you think?" "I think," Luna said, looking around at the farmland that had become a battlefield, "that maybe the future belongs to people who know the difference between becoming more than human and remaining human, despite everything that tries to change them." As the storm cleared and normal communications returned, Jake helped the pack prepare Kane for transport. Their ship's systems came back online, and soon they would return to the stars, taking their prisoner to whatever justice awaited him. But before they left, Luna approached Jake one final time. "We could use someone like you," she said. "Someone who understands that the best technology in the universe is useless without the wisdom to use it properly. The pack is always looking for new members." Jake looked at his ruined house, his scattered cattle, and the land that had been his family's home for generations. Then he looked at the stars beginning to show through the clearing sky. "Thanks for the offer," he said finally. "But I think I will stay here." Someone needs to keep the home fires burning for when the travelers need a place to rest. Luna nodded, understanding. If you ever change your mind, just look up at the stars and call for the Fenrir pack. We will hear you. As their ship lifted off into the clearing sky, Jake stood in the ruins of his farmhouse and began planning the rebuild. The foundation was still solid, after all. His grandfather had built well, and somewhere out in the galaxy there were other monsters, other threats, and other travelers who might someday need refuge during a storm. Jake Morrison would be ready for them. The stars were vast and full of dangers, but Earth endured, humanity endured. And sometimes that was enough to tip the balance between civilization and chaos. Sometimes it was everything. 6 months later, the new Morrison farmhouse stood complete. It was larger than the old one, with better shielding and a few technological upgrades gifted by grateful bounty hunters. Jake still worked the land, still raised cattle, still lived the quiet life of a Montana farmer. But now he also kept a long-range communicator tuned to certain frequencies. Sometimes at night he would receive messages from across the galaxy, reports of successful hunts, requests for advice on human psychology, and occasionally, invitations to join adventures among the stars. Jake always politely declined the invitations, but he treasured the messages. They reminded him that the universe was vast and full of wonders. But sometimes the most important battles were fought not among the stars, but in defense of the simple places that made life worth living. The morning started like any other. Jake was checking his cattle when the communicator crackled to life. Luna's voice came through clearly, though she was probably thousands of light years away. "Jake, this is Luna. We have a situation that could use your input." Jake smiled and keyed the transmitter. "Morning, Luna. What kind of trouble are you in now?" "We are tracking a group of raiders who have been hitting farming colonies in the Outer Rim. They seem to have learned from Kane's tactics. They study their targets before attacking, looking for psychological weaknesses." "Sounds familiar," Jake said. "What do you need from me?" "These raiders hit a family farm on Kepler 442b yesterday. The family escaped, but the raiders destroyed everything. Photos, heirlooms, 3 generations of memories, just like Kane did to your place." Jake stopped walking. His cattle looked at him curiously as he stood still in the middle of the pasture. "Are the family safe?" "They are in a refugee camp now, but Jake, the father is talking about giving up farming. Says there is no point in rebuilding when monsters like this exist." Jake understood. He had felt the same despair when he looked at the ruins of his own home. The urge to just walk away, to find somewhere safer and easier. "What is the farmer's name?" Jake asked. "Marcus Webb. He has 2 children and a wife. They have been farming that land for 50 years. Jake thought about his grandfather's words about pulling your weight and watching your neighbor's back. The definition of neighbor had gotten a lot bigger since the wolf pack entered his life. "Patch me through to him," Jake said. "Let me talk to this Marcus Webb." The connection took a few minutes to establish. When it came through, Jake could hear the weariness in the man's voice, even across the vast distance of space. "Mr. Morrison? Luna said you might have some advice for me." "Call me Jake, and I hear you are thinking about giving up farming." "What is the point?" Marcus said bitterly. "We work for decades to build something, and monsters can destroy it in minutes. Maybe it would be better to find work in the cities. Somewhere safer." Jake looked around at his own rebuilt farmstead, at the cattle grazing peacefully in fields where a monster had hunted them 6 months ago, at the new house that stood on the foundation his grandfather had laid. "Marcus, can I tell you something about foundations?" "I suppose." "When my grandfather built this place, he did not just think about the house that would sit on top. He thought about the storms that would come, the floods and droughts and everything else that would try to tear it down. So he built the foundation to last." Jake could hear children playing in the background of Marcus's transmission, life continuing despite the tragedy. The foundation is not just the stone and concrete, Jake continued. It is the knowledge that gets passed down, the skills your children learn, the neighbors who help when times get hard. The raiders can destroy your buildings, Marcus. They can burn your crops and scatter your animals, but they cannot touch the foundation unless you let them. There was a long pause. Then Marcus asked, "How do you rebuild after something like that? How do you find the strength?" "One day at a time," Jake said. "One fence post at a time. One season at a time. And you remember that the land endures. Your family endures. The important stuff survives if you decide it is worth protecting." Another pause. Then Marcus said, "The children want to go back to the farm. My wife says we should rebuild, but I am scared it will just happen again." "It might," Jake admitted. "There are monsters out there, and some of them are smart enough to know that the worst way to hurt someone is to destroy what they love. But here is the thing, Marcus. There are also people like Luna's pack out there, hunting those monsters. And there are neighbors like me, ready to help when you need it." Jake could hear Marcus talking to his wife in the background. Their voices were too quiet to make out the words, but the tone was changing. Hope was creeping back in. "Jake," Marcus said finally, "if we rebuild, would you share the plans for your grandfather's storm shelter? Luna said it saved your equipment when the pulse hit." "Already sending them," Jake said, smiling, "along with some other improvements we figured out. And Marcus, when you get back on your feet, there might be other farmers out there who need the same kind of help. The neighbor thing works both ways." After the call ended, Jake continued his morning routine. But he found himself looking up at the sky more often, thinking about farmers on distant worlds who were probably starting their own days. People he would never meet, but who were part of something larger now. The universe was vast and full of dangers. There would always be monsters like Cain and raiders and other threats. But there would also be farmers like Marcus and hunters like Luna's pack and neighbors willing to help when times got hard. That afternoon, Jake received another message. This one was from Marcus Webb. "Jake, this is Marcus. We are heading back to the farm tomorrow. The children are excited to start planting again. Thank you for reminding me what foundations are really for." Jake smiled and looked around at his own land. His cattle were healthy. His crops were growing well. His new house was solid and strong. But more important than any of that was the communication equipment that connected him to a network of farmers and hunters spread across the galaxy. People who understood that civilization was not built by heroes in shining armor. It was built by ordinary people who got up every morning and did the work that needed doing. People who knew the difference between giving up and making a strategic retreat. People who understood that sometimes the most important victory was simply refusing to let the monsters win. As the sun set over the Montana plains, Jake Morrison sat on his front porch and listened to his radio. Messages came in from across the galaxy, farmers sharing weather reports from worlds he would never see, hunters reporting successful missions, children sending drawings of their rebuilt homes. The stars were beautiful, but Earth was home, and home was worth everything. But now Jake understood that home was bigger than one farm, or one world, or even one solar system. Home was everywhere people decided to plant roots and defend them. Home was the choice you made every day to stand guard over the things you loved, ready to defend them against any threat the universe might send. Under the vast Montana sky, surrounded by the land his grandfather had defended, and he would pass on to future generations, Jake Morrison kept watch. The stars were vast and full of wonders, and scattered among them on countless worlds. Farmers were tending their land, and hunters were protecting the innocent, and neighbors were helping neighbors. That was enough to tip the balance between civilization and chaos. That was everything,